I mean, joining the ranks of constitutional carry isn't the only thing that Texas is doing. As you can see, we got the they passed their election integrity bill that the Democrats fled. We talked about that, and they tried to say it was an election suppression bill. Well, they passed it and they sent it to Governor Abbott to become law, and Democrats damn furious about it. But let's just get into this because this is definitely it. This is the most.
That's how winning is done.
There are provisions in this bill that I don't agree with. This was a bipartisan bill. I heard them talking about it in their own state senate. It includes provisions from both sides. Those Democrats are just trash because they're part of the establishment crime BS that wants to manipulate the elections. Uh, this is the AP. If you want to read it yourself, explainer details on the final version of Texas's voting bill. Austin, Texas, the sweeping changes to Texas election code now awaiting GOP Governor Greg Abbott's signature would make it harder, sometimes even legally riskier to cast a ballot in the state, which already has some of the nation's most restrictive. This is AP. Your framing here is ridiculous. It makes it easier to vote.
You suck.
Real easier. Maybe we'll even go over the whole bill in tomorrow's episode. Democrats gridlocked the state capitol for 38 consecutive days after more than 50 fled to Washington, D.C. in July to deny Republicans a quorum, which is required to conduct the state's business. Enough of them returned less than 2 weeks ago to end the impasse. The GOP leaders made quick work of pushing the bill through both chambers, and Tuesday Abbott immediately said he'll sign it. He's a closer look at what is the final version of the legislation empowering poll watchers.
That's how winning is done.
Some of the most significant changes in the Texas legislation concerns partisan poll watchers, the volunteers deployed by both major parties to observe voting and counting. As recently as 1962, Republican poll watchers in some parts of Texas challenged Black and Latino voters to read and explain the U.S. Constitution before casting ballots as part of the campaign dubbed Operation Eagle Eye. In 2020, the President Donald Trump cited unverified observations from GOP poll watchers to spread doubt about the results and make false claims about fraud, and that is bull.
You suck.
Stop blaming Trump. I don't give a about the orange man. You Democrats made it harder to vote. You made it harder to trust the election. You made it so easy to vote that it wasn't secure. This legislation is good. The thing that you don't like is you need your ID. But you should have to prove that you're a goddamn citizen. Because only citizens should vote.
That's how winning is done.
The final language in the omnibus bill, the language in this article is ridiculous. Partisan poll watchers, new access protections and power. The legislation makes it a Class A misdemeanor, comparable to burglary of a vehicle for the election official to reject an appointed poll watcher. Under the measure, anyone knowingly obstructs the poll watcher's view also commits a legal offense. So this addresses them trying to keep them from watching the thing like they did in the last election.
Winning.
That's why it's addressing the areas where there may have been fraud. And if you're mad about that, then there probably was fraud. But I can't say it. We don't know for sure. It is what it is. The bill states that watchers may be free movement around the voting facilities and may sit or stand near enough or hear or see the activity. Texas law still prohibits poll watchers from watching someone actually cast a ballot. However, they may observe the transfer of voting data. The legislation empowers poll watchers to sue and seek court orders against election officials who get in their way. The new proposals would also require poll watchers to swear an oath that they will not harass voters and complete training prior to participating, for which they must show a certification upon arrival. Poll watchers may only be removed for violating election law if the violation is witnessed by the election clerk or judge, and for violations of the penal code. Republicans argue that these changes are needed because voters will only trust elections if their representatives have free access to just about every aspect of voting and counting. But Democrats and civil rights organizations worry about the history of Texas's conservatives using poll watchers to intimidate racial ethnic minority voters. I mean, the poll watchers are supposed to be a thing.
You suck.
I don't care if that was a thing or not. Even if it was still a thing, I don't give a they'd be bags for it. But every major party in the United States of America has a right to witness the goddamn election to make sure that it's fair and safe, because our country has a history of fraud.
You suck.
That's how winning is done. It doesn't matter who the you are. Democrat, Libertarian, it doesn't matter.
That's how winning is done.
It does not matter. Limiting opportunities to vote. No. It didn't limit. You could take off work and go vote.
Stop lying.
You can leave work, go vote, come back, and you can't be fired for it. The legislation written by Republicans explicitly rolls back ways Democrat counties have made it easier for people to vote, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. It bans drop boxes for mail ballots, a practice that has been used for years in other states, which there is major problems, and prohibits the mailing of absentee voting applications and ballots to all eligible. Yeah, you should only mail it to people that request one. The bill also makes it a felony for any election official who sends out unsolicited applications. Yeah, see, but you should only get one if you request one. And you should only be able to get one if you cannot vote in person for whatever reasons.
That's how winning is done.
The GOP bill also bans drive-through voting for most voters and controls the times at which county governments can keep polling places open. That would put a stop to 24-hour voting locations used in Harris County. One of the nation's largest, most racially diverse areas says 140,000 voters utilized its drive-through and 24-hour locations in November. Republicans argued that these procedures were used during the ongoing but once in a century pandemic and shouldn't be a regular features of voting in any state, and it's true. Democrats and voting rights groups say those measures simply make it easier for people to cast ballots and especially help working class, young, and ill voters access to the polls. Working class can just take off work. This is a fucking bold-faced lie. A bold-faced lie.
You suck.
Just go fucking vote. Stop making excuses. This is to make it so easy to vote that if I am Abdul Jabhim Kaharim from fucking Nigeria, and I'm getting paid by the Democratic Party to go vote for Biden. That's what that makes it easier to do. Two provisions of the bill, or even fucking Orange Man, if it's the other way around. Two provisions of the bill which make voting more convenient by extending earlier voting hours and mandating the workplace allows employees to make a trip to the polls during either early voting or on election day. And this is going to be a long segment, so we're probably going to cut it here. New hurdles to mail-in voting. Texas is one of the hardest states in the nation which to get by the process limited to those 65 or older voters who will be out of the state during the election or people with disabilities, and that's the way it should be. But we can't continue to read all of this. We'll just read the headlines. The Texas bill, this is criminal penalties, likely others proposed this year, creates and expands several criminal violations, including elections, some of which are broadly defined and could ensnare voters for those who help them. I mean, yeah, if you violate election law, you should be punished for it, period.
That's how winning is done.
You could finish reading this. It's the AP. I don't like that. That was insanely left. Yeah, insanely left it. But it is what it is. Texas made it easier to vote. You can take off work, you go vote. You got several days to vote. You can verify yourself by the same means for mail-in voting as in-person voting, which means all you really need is if you don't have a driver's license or social security card, you can sign an affidavit that you can verify at a later date when you do have your things. So you could take off work and not be penalized for it. There's several days to voting. This makes it easier to vote and easier and more secure. So I don't know what the Democrats think. This is the way it is. I think they're trying to hide something, and they're trying to keep it. They're trying to keep the country from being able to remove them from power because it stepped up and spoken. It doesn't walk this woke mess. I'm just saying.